Anthony Weiner admitted yet again to having more sexually charged online conversations. When asked by reporters how many women he engaged with online, Weiner replied, 6 to 10, I suppose, including a few after he'd already resigned from Congress, according to Jonathan Lemire of the Associated Press. Weiner, who was speaking from a soup kitchen in Brooklyn, also denied that this was an addiction. In fact, he went on to criticize the media for focusing on his past digressions. Joining me to discuss this is Arthur Delaney, HuffPost politics reporter. Arthur, he's been very open, very transparent, well, at least now, about his personal transgressions. And whom has supported him? Is he the problem, or are we?
Overly open and transparent with his problems. I think 6 to 10 is a pretty wide range of possible online dalliances we're talking about here. I think it is strange that he sees nothing strange about the fact that we now know, even after he resigned in disgrace from Congress, he has continued sending pictures of his dick to strangers on the internet. And as if that's not a totally weird and unusual thing for a disgraced public official to do, while at the same time, he's building a comeback and preparing again to seek elective office. I find it bewildering. I don't think the fact that his wife is sticking up for him really makes it any weirder at this point, because we're not talking just about their marriage. We're talking about his truthfulness and his discretion.
Right, and we've been talking about this in the office. Some people think that it won't matter, that people will still vote for him, and they cite Bill Clinton amongst others. But as you know, Weiner's negatives are at an all-time high, at least in poll ratings. We have that story up on the Huffington Post as well. So I don't know. I'm betting on no Weiner this year.
Well, this latest revelation has apparently, according to polls we just saw today, cost him the lead in these early stages of the New York mayor race. Mm-hmm. So you might be right about that. At first, it seemed like he was just invincible to this, but I think today's poll suggests that he's not.
Yeah, June 52%, and today's, I believe, 30. So expecting that to drop. Let's move on, though, to more numbers. About 47 million Americans received food stamps in the last year, but not many of them were required to work or look for a job in order to actually receive the aid. But that may soon change. House Republicans are considering whether there need to be changes made to the work requirements as a solution to trimming the $80 billion a year program, which has doubled, it should be mentioned, over the last 5 years. Arthur, a small group of GOP lawmakers met yesterday to discuss trimming the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, and you and I have spoken about the proposals, or lack thereof, in the past. What were the different solutions that were being suggested this time around?
Well, what they're looking for is, like you mentioned, a proposal that would allow states to require more recipients of food stamp benefits to work. And I think by talking about it this way, you might get the impression that most people on food stamps or who receive food stamps don't work. And that's true, but you have to keep in mind about 90% of people who receive these benefits are either elderly, disabled, or children. So when you look solely at working age, able-bodied adults, or older children who are getting these benefits who could work, most of them actually already do. And the work requirement for that smaller population that had existed in the program was suspended because we had the worst economy since the Great Depression. And if requiring people to work were a solution to unemployment, we would have required everybody to work by this point. But anyway. There's that proposal, which would essentially reward states for kicking people off the rolls, since one of the incentives there is that they get to keep some of the money that the government saves by not supporting those families. So I think that's really the main one. That was the sticking point when this bill was on the floor as part of a broader farm bill. And it's still unclear if even this harsher legislation would win the support of a majority of Republicans.
So, Arthur, to what you're saying, I mean, 1 in 7 Americans, as you know, used the federal food aid last year. What would happen if they, in fact, do strengthen the requirement?
The estimate that I'm familiar with from this is that it's actually not you don't get a dollar figure or I guess how many fewer people would receive benefits. But what the nutrition advocates and Democrats who support the program worry is that it would essentially allow, because it would give states this incentive to keep people off the program, states would find their own ways to make that happen. And so it could be potentially over time a pretty steep decline and really remaking of the way the program works. So that, next time the economy tanks, the rolls don't go up like they did.
Right. And then Arthur, yeah, go on. Sorry, man. Keep going.
No, you go.
No, you go. Okay, we won't play that game. How about this? How about we let the community go? Because that's what I was trying to get to. Some people actually chiming in. I don't have the expertise you do, so that's why I wanted to put this to you. Kira Lynn saying, people wouldn't need as many food stamps if the minimum wage was higher. We also are hearing, actually that one's blank, but Demetrius 1982 saying, how can we make work requirements when there are not enough jobs in the first place? What do you make of those points?
Those are great points. That's exactly what I was trying to say. The whole idea of a work requirement implies that there's plenty of work to go around, and there's not. And some of the work that does exist, that is available to the first comment, doesn't pay enough that you can really support a family, and that's why 30% of these 47 million people who are on food stamps already live in a household where somebody's working. And I've spoken to people who have jobs but still qualify for food stamps, and they might work full time, 40 hours a week, and you're getting something like $12 an hour or 10 or $8 an hour, and you still qualify for a little bit in food stamps. So it's not that there's a lack of industry or willingness to work among the people who qualify for this program. It's that there's a lack of good enough work to help them support their families without it.
Right, and as Lumen's pointing out, she's chiming in, or he's chiming in, I live in Kentucky right now, and the right-wing charitable Christians are really, really into cutting food stamps. Well, there you have it, one opinion. Excuse me. There's been a notable backlash against Senate Republicans who have threatened to shut down the government unless part of the president's health care law goes unfunded. And the senator driving the threat is Senator Mike Lee of Utah. On Wednesday evening, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid was asked about Senator Lee's efforts during an interview with PBS NewsHour, and he said this, quote, he's living in a dreamland, so Republicans, even Republicans, won't agree with what he's trying to do, and he is representative of the Tea Party, and that shows how senseless and illogical it is. Arthur, what exactly does Senator Mike Lee want to do? I mean, is he actually living in a dreamland?
Well, he's living in reality, and the reality is Republicans' opportunities to hobble Obamacare before it really ramps up and takes effect starting this fall are narrowing. So this is a more sort of an extreme last-minute effort to stop this law from fully taking effect. So in that sense, he's not in a dreamland. He's wide awake, and he sees the walls closing in. Because once this law starts and people start getting insurance, if it works as it's supposed to do, it's going to be popular eventually. So an interesting thing I love to point out about Harry Reid and Mike Lee. Harry Reid used to tutor Mike Lee when he was a little boy. They knew each other out west. So there's this great sort of paternal, condescending attitude that Reid has toward Lee here.
Well, speaking of the condescending attitude, I mean, why do you think this hostage-taking, as you kind of framed it, is still happening? It's kind of, it's surprising.
Well, it works. It works. It worked several times in Obama's first term. That's why we have sequestration. Sequestration happened because there was a debt ceiling and a government shutdown, and Republicans threatened not to approve legislation that would allow the government to continue borrowing money to pay for things Congress has asked for. And one of the concessions they got was these budget cuts that we now are talking about all the time, sequestration. So why not give it another shot? Even though some could say, well, you've already got these budget cuts out of the Obama administration. I think they'll give it a go. But it's important to bear in mind that Mike Lee is not a member of Republican leadership, and plenty of more senior members, more senior Republicans in the Senate are basically saying what he's doing is ridiculous.
Right.
And they themselves will have some leverage over him in these upcoming budget battles. So it seems unlikely to me that Mike Lee himself and his buddies will be able to really get these concessions or shut down the government without a whole lot of additional help that they don't have.
Well, thank you for that reminder, Arthur, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, you won't believe what's in your yogurt.